The judge actually laughed at him. Not because of a joke, but because Michael Jordan walked into court without a lawyer. Everyone thought this would be over in minutes. But what happened next shocked the entire courtroom. Because when Michael Jordan finally spoke, the laughter stopped, and the judge realized he had made a huge mistake. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Now, let's dive into what really happened. Everyone thought it was a joke. The moment Michael Jordan stepped into the courtroom, a strange energy filled the room. Quiet whispers spread from one bench to another. Some people smiled in disbelief. Others shook their heads, already convinced they knew how this would end. When the judge adjusted his glasses, looked down at the paperwork, and calmly asked, "Mr. Jordan, are you seriously representing yourself today?" The courtroom broke into laughter. Not because it was funny, but because no one expected him to do this. This wasn't a basketball arena where his name commanded respect. There were no cheering fans, no bright lights, no highlight reels playing on screens. There were no slam dunks or championship celebrations. This was a serious courtroom, quiet and formal, ruled by law and procedure. Michael Jordan stood alone at the defense table. He wasn't wearing a jersey. He wasn't surrounded by teammates. He wore a simple, professional suit, his posture calm, his expression focused. Cameras clicked as reporters rushed to capture the moment. To many observers, this looked like a confident celebrity walking into a situation he didn't fully understand. Even the judge couldn't hide a small smirk. The case itself was no small matter. It involved a complex business dispute related to a failed endorsement agreement. Large sums of money were involved, and the legal arguments were expected to be technical and intense. Jordan's former business partners had arrived with experienced attorneys, people who had spent their lives studying contracts, negotiations, and courtroom strategy. And Michael Jordan? No lawyer standing beside him. No dramatic statement to the press. No attempt to impress the room. Just steady eyes, and silence. To many in the courtroom, that silence felt like uncertainty. And once again, laughter quietly echoed through the room. The judge leaned back in his chair, his expression calm but clearly unimpressed. He had seen many cases like this before. Wealthy individuals assuming confidence and status could replace legal experience. Adjusting his glasses, he spoke firmly but professionally. "Mr. Jordan," he said, "this court operates on law and evidence, not reputation. I strongly recommend that you allow your attorney to handle this matter." There was no hostility in his voice, only authority. The room fell quiet as everyone waited for Jordan's reaction. Michael Jordan nodded politely. "I understand, Your Honor," he replied. His tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't emotional. It was steady and controlled. That calm response caused a few raised eyebrows, but it didn't change the mood in the room. Across the courtroom, the opposing lawyers exchanged confident smiles. To them, this was exactly how they had imagined it. They believed the case was already leaning in their favor. In their minds, Jordan was simply another famous figure stepping outside his expertise. They assumed he would eventually stumble. But what no one in that courtroom could see was the work done long before this moment. Michael Jordan had not arrived unprepared. For months, he had taken this case seriously. While public attention focused on his business ventures and public appearances, he was quietly studying the details of the dispute. He read contracts line by line, learned legal terminology, and reviewed similar cases to understand how courts interpreted complex agreements. He wasn't trying to replace professional lawyers. He was trying to understand the system. Jordan didn't want to sound like a lawyer. He wanted to think clearly, logically, and strategically, just as he always had. The judge saw silence. The lawyers saw confidence. The room saw a celebrity. But beneath that calm exterior, Michael Jordan was ready. And slowly, the balance of the case was about to change. Finally, the moment came. Michael Jordan was called to speak. The courtroom fell silent. At first, it was curiosity that held everyone's attention. People leaned forward, wondering how a world-famous basketball legend would handle a complex legal case without a lawyer by his side. The opposing lawyers exchanged smirks, confident that this would be another celebrity misstep. Jordan stepped forward calmly, his eyes focused on the judge. He adjusted his papers and began in a measured tone. Your Honor, I'd like to begin by referencing Clause 14, subsection C of the contract, he said. For a brief moment, the courtroom froze. The judge paused, mid-breath, and the lawyers glanced at each other in surprise. Jordan didn't rush. He didn't stumble. He spoke with clarity, confidence, and precision, explaining exactly how the clause limited liability in the specific scenario the plaintiffs were presenting. Every word was deliberate, every point logical, and impossible to ignore. Then, he did something no one expected. He connected the law to basketball, a world everyone thought he only belonged to. In basketball, Jordan explained, a contract is like a play. If everyone agrees on the play beforehand, you can't change the rules after the buzzer. A few heads nodded. The judge leaned forward, intrigued now. The courtroom was no longer just listening, they were paying attention. Jordan continued, calmly pointing out inconsistencies in the opposing side's claims. He highlighted emails, timelines, and signatures that directly contradicted their argument. Every point was backed by evidence, every statement carefully structured. It wasn't luck. It wasn't celebrity status. It wasn't charm. This was preparation. Months of quiet study, careful reading, and understanding had brought him here. And suddenly, the courtroom realized something important. Michael Jordan didn't need fame to win respect. He had come prepared to think like a champion, even in a courtroom. One by one, the smirks and confident smiles in the courtroom began to fade. The opposing lawyers, who had once been relaxed and sure of themselves, suddenly flipped through their documents faster, searching for points to challenge Jordan. But the more they looked, the more solid his arguments appeared. The judge, who had initially seemed amused, now leaned forward with real curiosity. He began asking Jordan questions, detailed, pointed questions that tested his understanding of the contract and the case. Each time, Jordan responded calmly, clearly, and confidently. He explained the logic, referenced clauses accurately, and addressed the inconsistencies in the opposing side's claims without hesitation. For the first time, the courtroom was silent. There was no laughter, no whispered comments, no sideways glances. Everyone was watching, listening, and processing what they were seeing. At one moment, the judge paused, removed his glasses, and said, "Mr. Jordan, that's a very sharp interpretation." The words hung in the air. Shock rippled quietly through the room. Jordan wasn't boasting. He wasn't showing off. There was no arrogance in his tone or posture. He was simply doing what he always did, breaking down the problem, step by step, analyzing every detail, and executing with precision. The same focus and strategy he had used on the basketball court now applied to the courtroom. Every move mattered. Timing mattered. Accuracy mattered. By the end of the hearing, the judge looked at Jordan directly, a mix of respect and surprise in his eyes. "I'll admit," he said, "I underestimated you." That single sentence changed the atmosphere completely. The energy shifted from amusement to admiration. Jordan had proven something important. Respect is earned through preparation, focus, and clarity, not fame. And in that quiet courtroom, the laughter that once echoed was replaced by awe and recognition of true skill. Days passed, and the tension in the courtroom finally came to an end. The moment everyone had been waiting for arrived, the verdict. The judge reviewed the case carefully, and after deliberation, he made the announcement. The case was dismissed. Michael Jordan walked out of the courtroom that day, but he wasn't celebrated as a basketball superstar. He wasn't surrounded by cheering fans or flashing cameras. He walked out as something even more important, a man who refused to be underestimated. Reporters rushed to him, curious and eager to know what had happened behind those courtroom doors. "Michael, why didn't you just let your lawyers handle it?" one reporter asked. Jordan paused, smiled, and gave a simple but profound answer. "Because people stop listening when they think they already know who you are." That statement captured the real lesson. This wasn't just about winning a lawsuit or proving a point in court. It was about showing the world that preparation, focus, and dedication are more powerful than reputation alone. Greatness isn't confined to one arena. Discipline, attention to detail, and strategy travel with you wherever you go. Just like on the basketball court, Jordan didn't rely on fame or luck. He relied on preparation, understanding, and execution. That's why he succeeded, not because others believed in him, but because he believed in the work. Even the judge, who had laughed at the beginning of the case, now saw him in a completely different light. Respect replaced amusement. Doubt turned into acknowledgement. And from that day forward, the judge never underestimated him again. This story reminds us all of one essential truth. Never underestimate someone who is quietly prepared. True power comes from knowledge, focus, and the courage to act when the moment arrives. And Michael Jordan showed the world that a champion isn't defined by applause, it's defined by quiet mastery and unwavering dedication.